This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Hello, my name is Harriton Buatco. Welcome to our program. Now, in the news, what keeps breaking is the impeachment proceedings in the Justice Committee in Congress. Will she be impeached? I'm not sure. While the answer is quite obvious, we never know which way it's going to go. But if we were to consider the numbers in the plenary, it's not anyone's guess. It's already definite which way it's going to go. What perplexes me is how Chief Justice Moreno has been holding on to her position rather than let go and go through the snake spit, so to speak. In the news as well as it's going around, there's a lot of murmur on what they call the revolutionary government. Now, last week in this show, I mentioned what one of the more professional, if not successful businessman, a tycoon and billionaire, Ricky Razon, said in the Business Forum at the ASEAN. Democracy and progress are not necessarily partners. And he gave the examples of many countries where authoritarianism prevails. It's true. It seems our system, with our democracy, everybody has a right, even the opposition of bidders who lose in projects. They can stall projects for years on end. Well, that's what you call rights. It's worse when you start adding the word human. And human rights becomes really problematic. All over the ASEAN, I'm not sure I know any other country other than Singapore now, but when I think about Singapore and you talk about human rights and the leader, the icon of Singapore, meaning Lee Kuan Yew, I doubt that he respected the human rights near as much as the United Nations would want it to be, or those opposed to President Trump. But either way, let's go forward. Today we have a guest who's been with us now, I think, on three different shows on the last 4 months. His name is Bobby Brilliante. He was very popular in Makati. He even ran for mayor of Makati at one point, but now has joined the government, the MRRD, that's Mayor Rodrigo Roa Duterte group, promoting what we call federalism. He's been pushing this, and as of late, it's now what we call the REVGOV. Bobby, kamusta? Thank you for being on the show. Alam mo, Bobby, I'll go straight to the queue, no? REVGOV, Revolutionary Government. Ang dami natatakot. Ano ba? Gusto maging martial law na naman ba? What is the true nature of what people say or fear called REVGOV, if that is even the case? Kasi before the show, sabi mo, the grassroots, kumiikot kasi kayo because of federalism. Baliktad ang nababasa mo. Diretso na, tuloy-tuloy mo na. Yet in the newspapers, here in Metro Manila and in the cities, parang may resistance, REVGOV, the editorials speak of it, diba? Most of them say no. In fact, Kit Tatad just came up with an article just the other day, revolutionary ideas, yes, but not government, so to speak. Tell us your point, your case in point.
Yes, thank you, Harry, and thank you for the invitation again. This REVGOV, it's a new term. It's a short term for revolutionary government. Whenever you say about revolution, it's really scary. Kasi
di ba, revolution eh.
Revolution is always characterized by violent struggle, armed uprising.
Correct.
Just like what we have seen in the histories of the world. But in the modern day period, we have seen that revolution came about peacefully. And among them is our own
People
EDSA
power.
in 1986, that it is possible for people to rise, revolt, and demand change of government and change of leadership
Without cause of death.
without cause of death and without so much legal battles. So when you talk about revolution, you're talking about people rising against a system that does not work for them. So, and in this case, the revolutionary government was already raised during the campaign. And so, if ever it is being raised right now, it is because it was one of the campaign promises by President Duterte. We have to remember that during the, not yet the campaign, in late 2014 and early 2000, up to the late 2015, we started being a run Duterte run. We were convincing then Mayor Rodrigo Roa Duterte to run for president. And that was because we saw no one who could do anything about the problems facing the country. So when Mayor Duterte then said, no, I'm not running, but let me go around the country. If the people and the country are really ready for change. In his going around, making public consultations from one community to another, province to province, he always asked the people, are you ready for federalism? Because if, although I am not running, but should I become president, I will transform our unitary, outmoded form of government into a parliamentary federalism system, because we want, as he was saying, he wanted a government whose officials are directly accountable to the people.
Hindi gaya ng Senado, no? Walang-wala.
Yes, and he said that if we cannot transform into a federalism by normal means, the extraordinary powers of the president and the sovereign will of the people can be utilized.
Should prevail.
And it should prevail. The second is that the dismantling of the illegal drugs syndicates.
Ikalawa lang pala yun, yung
Yes,
drugs.
oo. The third was corruption,
Corruption.
stopping corruption, and of course, the emancipation of the Filipino people from poverty, and that is the anti-poverty program. And right now, that the president is already president, he is under obligation to produce results as he promised, because he was voted upon by the 16 million, not to include the 5 million is lost from his votes. Kung ito total natin yan, is the 21 million people voting for him based on these 4 campaign promises.
I'm beginning to see that the word REVGOV, or revolutionary government, does not necessarily mean blood on the streets. It does not mean people, Filipinos, shooting each other.
Yes.
But the revolutionary concept, which is the word or the concept federalism. Now, that revolution is against the system that we currently have. Meaning, when you say, kaya nalito ako kanina, sabi mo, alam mo, umiikot ako ng bayan, which you do, no? Kasi
Yes,
umiikot kayo eh. And when you say, yun ang hinihingi ng taong bayan, it's another word synonymous to the concept of federalism. Is this correct?
Yes.
Revolution in the change of government, but not to go out in the streets and shoot each other.
Yes.
Which is what's being well, which is now being conveyed now, but many an editorialist sa mga dyaryo, parang pinalalabas nila, Marcos na naman tayo, autocracy or what you call authoritarianism, di ba, and everything else. But really, what you're just saying is a revolution on the change of the style system of government. Is this, tama ba po yan?
Yes, yes.
Parang ganun. Hindi yung bakbakan, hindi barilan.
Yes, tama yun. Actually, the peaceful revolution came from a Christian teaching. It was Jesus Christ who first brought to us the revolution without bloodshed, no? Except that in the end, he was the one crucified. Ang violence was upon him. But he did not advocate violence against the Roman Empire.
Bakit kaya?
In the case later on, it was Mahatma Gandhi that instituted the Christian theory of non-violent struggle. Kaya di ba sa India,
umupo siya, no?
He would rather na violence would be inflicted upon him and upon them rather than inflicting violence upon the British. But they won. And it was a classic example of a non-violent revolution that won. And another, of course, itong sa atin sa EDSA, di ba? We did that.
Pero, Bobby, bakit kaya? You know, many a writer, I'm sure, perceive themselves intellectuals, especially those in the major dailies, especially those that have been writing for 20, 30, 40 years. And yet, most of them, a good 90%, seem to promote the concept of revolutionary government, missing the point that it is basically federalism that you are promoting. Bakit parang tinatakot ang taong bayan? Ito, babalik na naman yung Marcos era dictatorship. Di ba parang, that to me was top of my mind when I see REVGOV. Di ba? Bakit nananakot? Sino nananakot? Sino naninira? At sino nag-iiba? Or hindi nila naintindihan yung concept ng revolutionary government?
Most likely, hindi masyado naiintindihan. Or if ever naiintindihan, it is their strategy of employing scare tactics to discourage the growth of people supporting a revolutionary government. Kasi you have to first dissect how did this revolutionary government struggle come about. 1 year and a half na tayong nag-intay.
Correct.
The transition to federalism was a campaign promise number 1.
Primary yan.
That should have been the most urgent bill to be talked about by both houses, House of Representatives and the Senate. But look at where they are now.
Wala nga.
They feast on investigation here and there because that is where they can
Go on TV.
achieve high media visibility. And as we always say, it's an investigation not by legislation but by election. So, kaya yung taong bayan nagtatanong na, Mr. Duterte, pinangakuan mo kami ng federalismo, naniwala kami na yung vast powers ng Office of the President ay iyong i-dismantle at i-distribute mo sa iba-ibang estado, bibigyan natin ng poder yung ating mga lokal na pamahalaan at yung economic program ng mga lugar sa iba-ibang rehiyon ay maipapatupad na nang hindi kinakailangan pumunta sa Imperial Manila. So, nasaan ito? Ang tao now ay nagtatanong, but then again, nakagapos ang kamay ni Presidente because he cannot just transform into a federal system without first amending the Constitution.
But Bobby, Speaker Alvarez is pro-Duterte, and he was there because of Duterte, him coming from Davao himself. He can easily maneuver the House, guide them, direct them towards federalism. Bakit miski siya? Parang ayaw niya ilagay sa lamesa pag-usapan.
Kasi nga, even within the administration party, the PDP laban, hindi sila nagkakasundo sa ganong bagay. although kung titingnan natin ang programa ng PDP Laban as a party, it is really for federalists.
Yeah, it's federal. The old man, Rene Pimentel,
from the
1991.
beginning.
The father of local government. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The problem is that this president is not the kind of president who dictates. He cannot say, Speaker or Senate President, I want an immediate legislation on constitutional amendment so we can transform into federalism. Hindi siya ganung klase. He just convey his wishes. He just said, this is our campaign promises, let us do it. But then, legislating his wishes is the matter for the Congress. To do.
So, baliktad ang ginagawa actually ng media. Pinalalabas nila, Duterte sa dictator, he's authoritarian, di ba? Because kung ano sinasabi niya, parang dinidiktahan niya. And then, tinira pa siya ng EKJ, di ba? Rather than cleaning up the system, letting go of the drugs, pinabaliktad pa nila. And now, the word REVGOV, tinatakot pa yung taong bayan, magiging martial law na naman. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ganito ang, this is the perception today.
Simple lang yan eh. If Rodrigo Duterte is a dictator, dapat sana yung mga acidic critic niya like Senator Trillanes, patay na dapat yan. But why is he still alive? Kasi ang diktador, you have seen dictatorship in Europe, in Latin America, and even in the case of Marcos.
Just Singapore. Singapore lang, katabi lang natin.
Kung si Duterte ay diktador, patay na yan. Kung si Duterte ay diktador, dapat yung Kongreso ay hindi na niya pakikiusapan pa, kundi didiktahan na lamang niya, I want a legislation. Do it within 3 months period. Ganun lang eh. Because dictator came from the root word dictate. What this is the president that does not dictate. So how can you be a dictator? So...
But, you have to admit, major TV networks and major newspapers and even many a radio who are oppositionists, this is exactly what they peddle to the public. Now, Duterte is a dictator. Di ba? I think that's what the UN even thinks, if I'm not mistaken, and the European Parliament.
Because the mainstream media is for the status quo. They will always fight, they will always destroy the idea of change. So, they will employ all scary tactics that they can use for people to doubt. But
you mean the oligarchs?
Yes.
Media being just the platform. The oligarchs who own the media networks.
Yeah, the media, the mainstream media is the medium of the oligarchs, di ba?
The medium of the oligarchs.
And they have the monopoly of the major networks. So, ganun ang nangyayari. And yung mga galamay naman yan sa ibaba, ganun ang ginagawa. But then, makikita natin, there is a strong resolve among the Filipino people to really pursue change. Kaya nga, sa halip na mapigil na yung REVGOV, para itong siga na naging sunog, naging wild fire na to, na hindi nila maaaring mapigil. And we will see what happens in November 30 when the people would march to Malacanang and surround the office of the President and demand that the President declare a revolutionary government. Dahil without such powers, without such sovereign will by the people being granted to the President, walang magagawa ang Presidente. And again, as I said, the President is obligated or under obligation to perform. When he promised during the campaign that he will transform into federalism, that he will dismantle illegal drugs, that he will stop corruption, and that he will pursue anti-poverty program to emancipate the people from poverty. He committed himself into a social contract when he campaigned, because
when he won.
Yes,
may kontrata na yun.
Because the fact that you were voted upon, the people approved, and their vote in the precincts were their signature, signing a social contract with the President. And when the President took his oath, he made a covenant with the Filipino people that his campaign promises will be a reality. Now, the people will be asking, nasaan na ito? And when the people see that the Congress is not doing anything and the Congress has become a stumbling block to pursue the change that we have commonly agreed, that's why we put Duterte into presidency, then the people has the very right to rise and use their sovereign will to achieve what is good for the country and for the Filipino people.
But who is to say, we, the people, how do we gauge or measure the volume of people if, I mean, ideally, even Metro Manila in the people power in 86, really, if you look at the numbers, it is but a fraction of the 100 million Filipinos, di ba? So, everything is a game of perception. Even EDSA, to a certain point, was a game of perception. But whether that be a real gauge, because even Smartmatic were in the last election, other than Duterte getting the majority, in spite of being ninakawan na nga siya ng mga boto, and the moneyed people and the oligarchs did not help him. If in fact he didn't have as many ads or anything, di ba? He was the most crippled president when it came to mass media. Di ba? Wala siyang fans eh. Nagagalit nga siya sa ABS-CBN, yung 2-point-something million yan, hindi pinalabas. Sama ng loob niya, I mean, emotional, kasi malaking pera sa kanya yun eh.
Siyempre.
Okay, but what happens is, ang nangyayari, baliktad. How do we gauge that it's real people power? How do we say we the people? Like you, for example, your personal experience, kasi umiikot ka eh. Grassroots ka, you've been talking about federalism, you've been answering questions, you've been going, talagang grassroots. Yun ang sinasabi mo, REVGOV. But how do we know if that is the majority of the Filipino? How do you convince the press to tell the people ito nga nangyayari when the press, the very press, is the one holding that information back, assuming it is correct? O,
Yeah.
di ba? How do we go about that? Sasabihin niya, fake news yan. O, di ba? Bobby Brilliante, wala, fake news yan kasi, ano yan, pro-Duterte yan. Eh. Binalik na naman sa politics.
Yeah, yeah. Kasi when you talk about people's approval and people's demand by majority, you're talking about representation of the number of people. You do not expect the 100 million
vote.
Filipinos to go out on the streets. Even during elections, makikita natin, we only have about 55 million voters out of 100 million. So again, you do not expect the 55 million to go out and vote. Now, even when doing a survey, no, a survey.
A representation always only.
A survey is supposed to take a total sentiment of the Filipino people, but you're only asking about 1,200 respondents.
Yeah.
So again, we can say, Filipino people lang may 1,200. Again, during EDSA, assuming na we had about 500,000.
500,000 nga.
Anybody can say, 500,000 na ba yung buong Pilipinas?
So, yun ang question dyan. Correct yan.
If in the end we march to Malacanang and we go out in every regions and provinces and we are able to come up with about 500,000 or 1 million, that is just a representation of the people's sentiment. Otherwise, you cannot even gather kahit na 20,000 kung ayaw ng tao. But the fact that you gather about 50 to 100,000, there is already a general sentiment.
And that's more than enough.
And that's more than enough to show that the people really would like change.
Bobby, we're going to have to take a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, we will talk about the march. There is a gathering for Heroes Day, which is on November 30. You're talking about 3 days from now. That's a Thursday. Let's hear what the plan is. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.